conversation, I got called a lap dog. I don't understand how I got astray. I thought we were good.
Well, the reason why I made that comment was because you took back some information that wasn't true.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brooke Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Atlanta, Season 16, Episode 12. And before we get into it, I know I'm late with the recap, but I have a good reason. Your girl is outside, and I spent this weekend seeing my girl Beyonce, baby Cowboy Carter, 8 down. That was my 4th time seeing Beyonce, and this has to be her best tour yet. And I didn't think that she could top Renaissance, but she did. And if you are going to see her, just know that you are in for the most amazing time. Beyonce is incredible. She puts on a phenomenal show, and Cowboy Carter was 3 hours long. Listen, 8. I'll do a separate live recap video on the show. Just phenomenal. I want to go see her again. Now, on to the recap. I don't know if I want to go scene by scene or if I just want to spend 50 minutes dragging Brit Edie. Brit, I want you to listen to me clearly. This event single-handedly exposed how much of a fraud, a wannabe, a charlatan, a desperado, all the things. Because for you to sit up here and cosplay like you're rich, girl, your slip showed. What do you mean we are hosting an event, but only 7 people get to eat and everybody else has to stand there and have light bites?
You done lost your damn mind. When you get your damn mind, you call me.
What do you mean we've invited about 100 people, but only 7 people get these raggedy gift boxes while everybody else watches? But you want me to believe that you are of the upper crust and have a country club membership, but you're pulling stunts like this. And before the 3 or 4 Brit Edie stans try to come for me today, let me just let you know this ain't that, because I grew up in Jack and Jill. My father was a lawyer, God rest his soul, double Ivy League educated. So yeah, I know what it is to be in these circles that you pretend to be in. I have never witnessed anything like this ever. And for you to get on national TV on a show that's supposed to be about rich women and pull a stunt like this, I mean, I was so livid. I was flabbergasted. I said, girl, what? Because nothing pisses me off more than bad hosting, bad events, no food, and folks playing in my face because they're cheap. I also can't stand cheap people. If you're not going to entertain correctly, don't entertain at all. But just know, if you are a Brit Edie fan, stan, whatever you want to be, don't come in these comments talking crazy, because I'm letting you know right now that I'm wearing your fave out.
And you're gonna always get it again and again and again.
And see, you think that having money means that you're elevated. All you have is money, and I doubt that you even have that, because this event showed that you don't have it like that. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that you and your husband do have money. It's more than just having money. You don't have the class. Because anybody with class would know that you don't host an event and don't feed everybody. You think that because you can go to Neiman's and Saks that you're somebody. You can still go to Neiman's and Saks and still have a poverty mindset, because that's exactly what it showed for this sorry event. I've gotten on several housewives for their lack of hosting, but even still, it's never been this bad. You take first place when it comes to the worst event that I've ever seen. This was even worse than Robin Dixon's Family Fun Day in season 7. We've seen the girls of Potomac give you 1 cracker and a piece of cheese and some beans and franks and some ramen, and I thought that was bad. But this surpassed that. Bravo, I don't know who did the vetting, but I need to know Who saw Brit Edie and said, this is Real Housewives material? Say what you want about anybody on this cast. Portia would never have an event with no food. Shamia would never. Drew would never. Even the former housewives, as cheap and as low down as Sheree Whitfield was, she would always have some food. But I'm going to let you know right now, whatever I say about Brit Edie, I'm standing 10 toes down in it. And I'll say it again. She needs to be off this show. But without further ado, let's get right on into it because you guys already know that we don't have a minute to spare. So we open up the episode with Shamia at home. She's in her backyard laying out by the pool and we see Kelly come over. Now, let me just stop here for a minute. Shamia and Kelly, you guys are both clicking down for me right now. And I'm upset because I was so excited for what was to come for the both of y'all. And you guys are both getting on my nerves. And Shamia, I have more disappointment for you because I went so hard for you in the beginning. But you're letting me down. And we're going to talk about that scene when you were at the radio station. You're doing a lot with this whole one-sided beef with you and Drew. I'm getting secondhand embarrassment. And we'll talk more later on. But both Shamia and Kelly are wearing me thin. And it's upsetting me and my homegirls because I had such high hopes for them and they're both looking funny in the light. But anyhow, Shamia's asking Kelly how she's doing. Kelly says that she's been through so much. She feels like the group has been through so much and she thinks that it's the perfect time for the group to go on a vacation. So now Kelly says, what better way to get us all together in the Caribbean waters? And then she goes on to ask Shamia if Shamia would co-host the trip with her. And Shamia says, I would love to, but it depends on where it is. So Kelly was trying to give Shamia a clue, but in my opinion, this clue was so vague because it could have applied to so many places. Kelly says, think of a place that has beautiful blue waters. And I'm like, girl, there are so many. Just say where you're going. So Shamia's guessing all wrong. At first she says the Maldives. Kelly's like, girl, no. Then Shamia says Puerto Rico, Brazil. And I said, Shamia's all over the map. I mean, we went from the Maldives to Puerto Rico to Brazil. We're now jumping continents. I said, my God. So because Shamia can't seem to guess correctly, Kelly says we're going to Grenada. So Shamia's excited and she says, oh my gosh, Grenada, the island of sea moss. So production shows that no, Grenada is known for their spices. So again, Shamia's wrong. So Kelly says that she's excited because she's never been, but she does have some friends out there. And then Kelly brings up how Grenada was affected by the hurricane that happened, and she also wants to go there and provide some aid for the people who live there. And then she adds that her contact out there is named Randall. So now we cut to Shamia's confessional, and she says that God loves a cheerful giver, and that's very true, he does. I was always taught that you're blessed to be a blessing. So Shamia, while you're getting on my nerves about this whole Drew stuff, I'm with you when you're correct. And I love the fact that you seem to be a very generous person. So now they FaceTime Randall to ask what do they need to help with. And Randall says, we need things for our diabetic patients. We need toiletries, donations. And Shamia's like, we got you. So Kelly says that she needs this trip because she's been super overwhelmed. She's coming up on her divorce date. And then she says to go through a divorce for over 2.5 years, it drains you mentally, physically, and financially. So then we find out that her attorney called her and her lawyer bill is over 100 grand. And then she says that it feels like her ex wants her soul. Now, Kelly, what did your ex-husband do for a living? Did he have a job? It's giving very much Kelly Clarkson, Wendy Williams, Mary J. Blige. You know how it goes. When the woman has the money and you have the bum of a man trying to suck her dry because he's mad. Just a hot mess. I'm not going to hold you guys. We can skip past this scene with Portia looking at the house with her mom and sister. I don't have too much to say other than the house was beautiful. I think it was was 8 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms. It was $4.2 million, but not a whole lot happened. We don't know anything more about her divorce with Simon. She can hardly say his name, so I don't have much to say. Also, anytime I do say anything about Portia, I get met with, you just don't like her, why are you being so mean to her? So, I can't win either way, so I'm just gonna skip right past it and let's be done with that. But just so we're clear, I don't hate anybody, and that includes Brit Edie or any housewife that I'm a bit hard on. I'm simply discussing what we're watching on TV. So for people to minimize it to I hate somebody, you have it all the way wrong. And that's very immature thinking, because when I'm saying what you want to hear about somebody that you don't care for, I'm the best reviewer, I'm great, I'm on point. But then when I critique one of your faves, now I'm unfair, I'm not objective, I'm this, I'm that. Got it. So to save everybody the agony and the stress, we're going to skip right past this scene because, again, I don't have a whole lot to say anyway. Now, Kelly, this short scene of you and your dog getting massages, it's giving that you don't have a whole lot going on either. And it's no shade, Miss Mamas, but like I said before, you came in hot, but you're sort of fizzling out. So now we see Shamia at the radio station. She's at V103 and she's doing an interview about her new single. So at first the interview is going off well, and then Big Tigger brings up Drew's song. So Shamia, here's where I have to gently whack you, because what are we doing? If I were you, I would have kept it short and sweet. Shout out to Drew. Happy for her, she's doing her thing, I'm doing my thing, and then I would have proceeded to talk about my music. The fact that you immediately started shading Drew, I said, what are we doing here? You're sitting up there saying, I've never heard her music on this station, and everything that I sing about is authentic and real, and when you have folks talking about, I speak 5 different languages. I said, when has Drew ever said that she speaks 5 languages? And Drew cleared that up on the after show. She said in her song, she was speaking about the 5 love languages. And then when you went on to say that you have so much going on in your life that you forget that you're beefing with people, I said, is it really beef if you're the only one beefing? Beef involves 2 people. If the other person is not beefing with you, then you look crazy. And for you to be this mad because Drew called you a lapdog, really? People have done and said worse to you, and you haven't had this same energy for them, but you have all this energy for Drew. Got it. And you really lost me, sis, when you said, don't play with me, play with your mammy, lying ass biatch. I said, Shamia, we're doing a lot over very little. Because again, where is all this energy for other people? I get the impression that a lot of these ladies feel like Drew is an easy target, and that's why they pick on her. Because I don't understand why they keep calling her a liar when we have other liars on this cast. And Drew's lies are very harmless, very silly lies, whereas other people's lives are very damaging and career-ending. You want to talk about liars, but Bravo hired the biggest liar to come back. But you don't have any smoke for her when she lied on you with your best friend, I might add, in season 9. But yet you have all this smoke for Miss Drew Sidora. Shamia, respectfully, you are clicking down for me, and I really hate that for you. For you to spend your entire interview trying to throw shade at somebody else and not talking about yourself is embarrassing. That's an L. So now we cut to a short scene with Brit and her husband, and Brit shares that she's launching her own shapewear line, and it's called Bare and Naked. I think Bare Naked would be a better name than Bare and Naked, but that's just me. Brit, do what you want to do. God bless. So Bare and Naked is supposed to be loungewear and shapewear. So Brit says that she wants to host an event at the country club and have a country club polo classic event for her shapewear line. Now, shout out to the country club, but I don't understand what polo classic has to do with shapewear and loungewear. If this were me, I'd be hosting this at the restaurant in Neiman Marcus or Saks and I do it there at a clothing store. That would make more sense. Brit continues on and says that she originally wanted to launch her shapewear line when she opened up her insurance agency, but she put it on hold. But now that her insurance license has been suspended, she now has the time to invest in her shapewear line. In all seriousness, this shapewear line is giving very much She by Sheree, because I don't think that Brit is business savvy or has any business acumen. This whole thing sounds like a hot ass mess. So now we jump on over to Angela and Charles. They're at one of their investment properties, and this property is going for $465,000. Now Angela's stressed because the property just is a mess. The contractor made all these promises and things are not in the best shape. Now mind you, this property has been on the market for quite some time. Angela says that originally it was on the market for $499 and it's been reduced several times, and now it's back to the price that she paid for it, which was $348. So I can only imagine how annoyed Angela is. So Angela's going on about how stressed she is, and now she tells Charles about how her mom and sister are moving to another house. Let me just pause for a minute. I think that Angela is a phenomenal housewife. She definitely gives me old school housewives back when Sheree and Nene were on. She has a great vibe. But my only issue is that we only get 25% of the story. This whole family drama is so confusing. I check out every time because I feel like, Angela, either tell us the full story or leave it on the playground. What's the real beef between Charles and your family? What's the real story with your daughter, Amari? I feel like the viewers are being left in the dark, but I could not follow this conversation at all. And it was even more confusing when Angela started crying and she apologized to Charles. She was like, I just want to say I'm sorry for not hearing you out. I was upset that day because you and I were fighting. And I said, oh, what a surprise. You and Charles were fighting? Let me just leave that alone. But y'all know how I feel. I cannot stand the way he speaks to her, and I will stand 10 toes down in that. But let me just be quiet and move right on along. But yeah, I was lost about why Angela was crying and apologizing. Like, how do we go from 0 to 100? But now Angela brings up Brit's event and she says, you know that me and her haven't seen eye to eye. And Charles was like, so does that mean that I don't have to go? Angela makes a joke saying the first sign of 1998, Charles, we're out of there. And Charles says, look, just say hi from the both of us. And now Angela says, oh, exactly, because don't speak to my husband. So Angela says that based on the things that Brit has said about Charles, that she wants to expect the unexpected. But she does feel like since Brit invited her, that maybe it's time for a clean slate. Now, Angela, you know how unhinged Brit Edie is. And the fact that she's hosting an event, things are not going to go smoothly. So expect for there to be mess and for there to be no clean slate. So the moment we have all been waiting for, it's the day of Brit Edie's Country Club Classic event. We see Brit and her husband there at the country club. She's with her personal assistant, and mind you, the event is not set up. So I'm like, strike one. Brit goes on to say that the country club was her inspiration. So I'm just like, your inspiration for what? And even production is confused, because a producer goes on to ask her, what does shapewear have to do with a Kentucky Derby / country club / golf event? Help us out because we're all sitting here lost. Brit's answer made no sense when she said, well, it doesn't have to match the theme. I said, it doesn't? But again, I'm not surprised. With your pea brain logic, you don't know what you're doing. But Brit continues on and says that this event is her coming out and she wanted the women to get together and dress up and have some fun for once. So we see Kelly arrive first. Kelly has this gorgeous bouquet of flowers, and now we see Shamia arrive next. So Brit's like, how do you like my event? Production is so shady because they zoom into these empty tables, no tablecloths, no food, no drinks, no nothing. I said, we're having an event, but we're not ready. Got it. So Brit goes on to say that she wants the women to get a taste of her life. I said, no, thank you. We'll all pass on that. Nobody wants a taste of these tacky and lowbrow behaviors. We're good. So now Brit suggests that they play some golf. And Shamia's like, I'm so confused right now. What's happening? We got dressed up to play golf. Like, how does that work? So even Kelly points out that it's suspicious. And she says, it's weird to me because it feels like none of Brit's neighbors at this country club even know who she is. And I said it on Twitter, I do not believe that her and Mike are members of that country club. I believe that the country club allowed them to film for a few hours. But for whatever reason, I just don't believe that she has a country club membership. And I'm sorry, but I would have passed on golf. I'm not playing golf in 5-inch heels. What are we doing? And I have to ask one more time, what does this have to do with shapewear? I'm not trying to be mean, but she's a moron. Because what is this? So now we see Portia arrive. And she sees one of Brit's friends named Paris. So Portia's like, do you know what this event is for? And Paris says, well, she said that her brand's name is Bare and Naked. So I'm guessing it's makeup. So now we cut to Portia's confessional and the producer mentions how Brit and Portia have similar brand names. And Portia's like, hold on. I've had my company for over 10 years. Don't get it twisted. Put some spec on that name, okay? Like, it's not similar anything. I was here first. And I said, Portia, I'm with you on that because you had Go Naked hair for over a decade. Brit just got in the game with this so-called business with Naked and her brand name. So yeah, you guys are not the same whatsoever. And you were there first. And it's low-key giving copycat anyway. And also, there's a brand that I like a lot at Nordstrom called Naked Wardrobe. So I wonder how that's gonna fly when you already have a big brand that's a similar name. I honestly think that Brit should change the name of her shapewear line, just in my opinion. There are too many Nakeds, this and that. I don't know if Bare and Naked is gonna work. So now we see Angela arrive. She gives Brit a hug. And she's a bit skeptical. She's like, okay, where's the prank? Am I gonna be punked? Where's Ashton Kutcher? Then we see Drew following behind and Portia and Drew actually hug. I said, all right, 2 points for Portia for being mature and being pleasant. Because you could say what you want, but I feel like Portia's anger towards Drew is misdirected. So they're all standing outside and Portia's like, okay, so what's next? So Brit says, we're gonna go inside, have some lunch, and then I'm gonna do a presentation showing off my brand, Bare and Naked. When I tell you that Drew had me screaming because she said, I have no idea what Bare Naked has to do with the country club. Maybe we'll see some naked bears, I don't know. And then production put those bears dancing. I said, they are so shady. So now the ladies go inside, and mind you, Brit has invited more people. So if I had to guess, there were about 80 to 100 people at this event total. We see Cynthia arrive. She's fresh off the plane. So now we see Brit and her husband Mike walk to a private room to talk to her personal assistant, and I think it was the event planner, but Brit is bitching about how she's not trying to feed everybody. So here are Brit's exact words. When I tell y'all my jaw was on the floor, I said, come again? Brit says, everybody outside of our table is supposed to be standing up and having light bites. And I said, wait, hold on. I know I did not just hear that. I know those words did not come out of this lady's mouth. So the insanity continues. This clown says, that's why I did not want chairs or placemats. The menus were only supposed to be for the cast and the husbands. So Brit is blasting her event planner. She's like, I'm so pissed at her because that's not what I asked for. It was supposed to be food for us and drinks for everybody else. I said, you know we can see you, right? You know that you're saying this on national TV. So you're telling me that it made sense in your pea brain to host an event at a country club that you claim to be a member of, which I doubt, but you're telling me that you invite 100 people and you only feed 7 and you want them to stand up while you and your crew eat? To say that you weren't raised right would be an understatement, because for you to have such poor etiquette and such poor hosting skills says a lot. And what really blows me is the fact that you were actually serious about this. Brit, for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to be lighting you up. Like, it's going to be all gas, no brakes. I'm not letting you breathe, because this was such an atrocity. I said, oh my gosh, you really had an event and said, only 7 of us are going to eat on national television, on a show that's supposed to showcase rich women. And you have your goofy husband standing right next to you in agreement with this. And when you sat down and proudly told everybody what was going on, everybody at that table felt sorry for you. Had I been at this event, I would have turned you every which way but loose. Like, I'm being so serious. Don't you ever play in my face like that. This was painful to watch. And how do you think that everybody else feels eating, knowing that the whole entire party doesn't have a meal? And on the after show, Drew said that she felt bad eating her meal. Cynthia also felt bad. Angela was like, I was this close to ordering some pizzas off of Uber Eats. You don't do stuff like that. If you can't afford to entertain correctly, then don't do it. I was always taught, if you have to nickel and dime, then you shouldn't be doing it. I can't stand cheap behavior, because that's what this was. A complete slap in the face to invite people to your event and you're only feeding 7 people out of 100 people. Are you insane? I would have ripped you a new asshole for that, because how dare you? And the way everybody shaded you in their confessionals, rightfully so. Portia said, Atlanta's a hard place. You don't have a party with no food. Then she goes on to say, I'm embarrassed for Brit. Shamia was like, this is tragic. And they're both correct. But it truly shows you that money can't buy class. And on top of that, some people only have money, because Brit has no taste, no class whatsoever, no etiquette, nothing. All she has are some bags and some shoes, and she thinks that that makes her something. Well, it doesn't. You can have all the bags in the world and still be tacky. You were better off having this at your house. You could have gotten a few trays of charcuterie and a veggie tray, a few bottles of champagne, ordered some Italian food or some soul food, and called it a day. But to have this grand display of an event and you only feed 7 people out of 100 people, that's shameful. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care where you fall on the socioeconomic scale. When you are hosting an event, you feed everybody, and you make sure that there's enough food too. If you're serving hot dogs, hamburgers, fish, whatever, you make sure that you have enough. This was an absolute disgrace. And Brit, the fact that you would hop your ass on here and do this boldly is really beyond me. So to make matters worse, Brit gets up and gives her presentation of her shapewear. She has this PowerPoint on the screen showing her shapewear, and then she says that she has gift boxes for the most beautiful ladies. The most beautiful ladies are her cast members, so they're the only ones eating and getting gifts. When production panned to everybody else's faces, the looks of disgust. You invite me to your event, don't feed me. I can't even get a glass of water. But to make matters worse, you are gifting out gift boxes and I can't even get a gift box. Brit, I would have cursed you all the way out in the middle of this sorry ass, whack ass, tacky ass event. The audacity. And to add insult to injury, the gift boxes weren't even nice. You had them in these regular cardboard boxes, no tissue paper. I said, girl, what is going through your brain? Are you all right? But anyhow, they're opening them up, and Angela points out how shady Brit is because Brit gave her an extra large. So Angela's pissed, and she says she clearly got confused because that's the size of her toothbrush for that big ass mouth of hers. So now Portia wants to know what was the inspiration behind the shapewear line, and Brit says that in 2020 when she got her BBL done, she was in this ugly shapewear and she was just like, ew, like it just looks so gross. And then Brit shares that when she opened up her insurance agency, she treated all of her employees to free cosmetic surgery. So here's where things get messier. Brit walks over to where Angela and Charles are sitting, and she's like, how are you guys enjoying the event? And Charles says that he's having a nice time. Angela jumps in and says that she's happy to be here. She's having a nice time too. And then she jokes around and says, and by the way, Charles does not have a side baby. So I'm just like, okay, here we go. We're about to act a fool in this country club. And that's exactly what happened. So Brit says, oh, and by the way, I'm not one of Charles's whores either. So Charles says, well, yeah, I don't mess with whores. You could tell that Brit does not want any smoke with Charles because she was like, I was being funny. So Charles says, well, some things aren't funny. And also, Brit, I wouldn't be so quick to talk about Charles and Angela when there's a lot of speculation around your marriage and your businesses and what your husband does. So not too much, because I can assure you that if that gets brought up, you won't be too happy about that. So Brit's defending herself and she says, well, Angela said that I could be one of your whores. And Angela's like, look, we're all good now. Let's move on. And Brit's like, yes, let's move forward. So they settle that. And I said, thank God, because I'm not going to hold you guys. I am a bit tired of this whole Brit versus Angela. It was cool at first, but I'm like, it's been several episodes of them going back and forth. And Brit's a poor reader anyway, so watching her try to go toe-to-toe with anybody, especially Angela, is painful to watch. So now Drew jumps in and she thanks Brit for the invite. And she says, I know that we had some disconnect, but I would love to sit down and talk. So Kelly, you know how I said that you've been getting on my nerves lately? This whole scene at this brunch really got me because I said, Kelly, why are you jumping in when Drew's trying to talk to Brit? Stay out of it. And that's my main issue with Kelly. Kelly keeps inserting herself into other people's drama, and it's annoying. And I feel like it's a way to distract from how she's also somebody who doesn't have a whole lot going on either. But Kelly says to Drew that they should have a conversation, but Drew needs to be honest. And Drew's like, oh, I'm always honest. Get to know me, baby. And now we cut to Kelly's confessional where she says that she doesn't know much about Drew, but she knows that Drew is a liar. And I said, hold on, Kelly, because you just got on this show. It's your first season. And before you were on the show, you were watching at home like everybody else. So you know that there's been a narrative of Drew being a liar. And for you to jump on that, it's not a good look. It just feels like I'm following the crowd because fans have said it, castmates have said it, so now you want to say it to fit in and seem cool. And Shamia, in your confessional, you're going on about how Drew is a verifiable liar, and then you said they should call her a Drew Nokio because why won't your nose grow? I said, Shamia, you and these corny jokes, please stop. And on top of that, Shamia, this one-sided beef with you and Drew, it's falling flat. It's not giving what you think is giving. You look silly. So now Drew and Shamia get into it, and Shamia brings up the whole lapdog comment. So she's like, I don't understand. Why did I get hit with the stray? I'm confused. I thought that you and I were fine. So Drew owns up to what she said. She says, yes, I called you a lapdog, because for you to go and twist my words to Portia to stay in her good graces, I don't respect that. It got back to me that you took what I said that was positive as a negative, and I don't like that. So Shamia's like, no, girl, what you said was not positive at all. And they're both referencing the joke that Drew made about how her music's going to make so much money that it's going to help send Pilar to college. That's the joke that she's referring to. And if I'm being honest, Drew low-key won this battle with her and Shamia because the way she was so calm and Shamia was literally falling apart at the seams, I said, yeah, Drew low-key ate Shamia up. And even Drew said in her confessional, the fact that Shamia has all this smoke for me, but none of this energy for Portia, interesting. So Drew says, look, Shamia, this was my time to clear the air and let you know why I called you a lapdog. And Shamia is not trying to hear it. And Shamia, I officially see why people call you corny, because this display right here, I was cringing so hard. When you said kiss my ass and then you turn your back to Drew and started barking like a dog. I said, oh my gosh.
No.
So Drew was so disgusted by Shamia's antics. She's like, how old are we? And Shamia's like, in dog years or human years, bitch. And I said, again, Shamia, it's not landing. Is it too early for me to say that Shamia might be going out a little bit sad? Would I be wrong if I said that? Because I had to watch this scene with like half an eye open. Like I was like so embarrassed watching Shamia show out like this. So Brit breaks up the argument. She's like, stop it right now. Take it outside. This is a classy establishment. And I said, Brit, shut up. This event was already raggedy from the minute you planned it. You want to talk about it's a classy affair, but yet you didn't want to feed half of your guests. So shut up. Not too much from you either. Cynthia was so over it. The way she dipped out and left, she barely said bye to anybody. She said, I did not get dressed up to be a part of the circus. I'm good. So the event is over. And when I tell you, this has to be the biggest flop I have ever seen on any Real Housewives franchise ever. And that's saying a whole lot when we've seen a bunch of flops before. This event sucked. This short scene with Drew and her road manager, they're at her lawyer's office about to sign her record deal. It's about to be official between her and Dennis. She's excited, but she's a bit hesitant because of all the rumors about her and Dennis hooking up. So before she signs, we see her FaceTime Dennis to get to the bottom of everything. Dennis says, look, I don't know why you're listening to all that. It's not true. We all know that studio time is not free. And even Drew says, yeah, like I want to see the free studio time. Where is it? We all know that Drew does not like Dennis. That's not her type. We know what Drew's type is. And like she told Carlos King in her interview last week, she likes biceps and not bellies. So those were her words, not mine. I'm just the messenger. But I don't think that Drew wants Dennis in the least bit. And I think it's real nasty work that Portia's over here lying on Drew, saying that Drew wants her baby's father. But Dennis clears the air. He clears his name. Drew is pleased with his response. And now Drew signs the paperwork and it's official. She is signed to Dennis's label and she can't wait to make more music. Now, shout out to Drew because on the after show, she revealed that her album is number 5 on the charts, and that's a big deal. And I have to say, I don't understand all the Drew hate. She's really harmless when you think about it, and she's giving a lot more storyline than a lot of other people. So I'll never understand why people just hate her so much. Congrats to Drew. I wish her the very best. And her album is actually really good. So good for her. So now we get to the final scene of the episode, and it's the big reveal. It's the return of Phaedra Parks. And we see Portia over at Phaedra's house, and frickin' Frack are finally reunited. Now, I want to be completely transparent with y'all. I've never been a big Phaedra fan. When she joined the show with Cynthia in season 3, I always thought that she was so rude. I didn't like how mean she was to Cynthia. I didn't like that fake Southern Belle act. I just never took to her, right? Has she had some funny moments? Yes. Has she had some iconic reads? Yes. But I've always felt like she could be a mean girl, right? When she did what she did to Candy, I'm not going to go down that whole thing. We all know what happened. We all watched. That was traumatic enough with that 4-part reunion where she was exposed. When that whole mess happened, I was really never able to look at her the same. But we see Portia and Phaedra give each other a big hug. Then we cut to Phaedra's confessional and she says that she's back where she belongs. She's home. Now, I saw a comment that had me screaming in agreement because it's funny that Phaedra is saying that she's back home, back where she belongs. But remember when she was fired from the show and she called the show a sinking ship? So how do we go from a sinking ship to now I'm back where I belong, I'm back home. A lot of these women talk a good game once they're fired from the show about how they don't need the show anymore and they hope the show fails without them. But the minute Bravo extends an invitation to come back, they are back on these shows with bells on. So it shows me that Phaedra was dying to get back on the show since the day she got fired. Because again, like one of y'all said, how do we go from the show's a sinking ship to now I'm back home where I belong? So Phaedra does acknowledge that the last time we saw her, it wasn't her best moment. Everything was all good until she played with fire. And then she ends it with a Bible scripture saying, well, he who is without fault cast the first stone. Phaedra, we know that nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We all fall short. But where is the acknowledgement? And that's why I just can't get on the Phaedra bandwagon, because there has never been any remorse or acknowledgement of what she did. Now, Phaedra, one thing about it, you're going to always have a nice spread. And this spread was spreading, okay? My mouth was watering. So while I don't see it for you, I can always give the girls their 10s when they're due. This was a cute spread. Brit, Edie, that's how you treat a guest. Just saying. So anyhow, they're catching up. Phaedra's asking Portia if she's dating, and Portia says not yet. It doesn't feel right. So Phaedra's like, oh, you don't have the right set of 10 fingers. So they start laughing about that, and then Phaedra says that she's dating a 30-year-old. Is that the same guy who was on Married to Medicine this last season? Let me know. So Phaedra says that her friendship with Portia has been awesome. While they've had their ups and downs, they've always been friends. And then she goes on to say that true friendship can never be broken. Water seeks its own level, so you and Portia being besties, that is a match made in heaven. So now Portia's asking Phaedra about, does she know the ladies in the group? She brings up Kelly. Phaedra says, oh yeah, I've seen Kelly. She comes to the showroom a lot, and she's so tiny. She's tinier than me. She's like a little garden gnome. So now Portia mentions that Kelly and Brit Edie are best friends, and here goes Phaedra throwing shade. She's like, oh yeah, Brit Edie, I've heard about her. She's a girl about town. She's a girl about the city and the country. And then Phaedra goes on to say that that girl has more bodies than the funeral director, Willie Watkins. And I said, really, Phaedra, at your big age? One thing about me, I cannot stand folks who slut shame. I think that that is such a whack read, because you're trying to shame somebody for having sex. It doesn't matter if somebody has slept with a lot of people, no people, 3 people. It's none of your business. And that's such a lazy read, because again, there are other things that you can read her on besides that. And it's also funny that you want to shade somebody about being a city girl and being for the streets, but yet here you are trying to be outside as well. So now Phaedra says, well, somebody wifed her up, so obviously that chicken pot pie must be good and creamy. I said, okay, girl. You always focus on somebody else's cat, like worry about yours. Didn't you tell Kenya years ago that you were sitting on Aquafina and she was sitting on Captain Crunch? So worry about your Aquafina and leave everybody else alone. So now Shamia's name gets brought up, and the way I was expecting to hear some shade, because we all remember how Phaedra lied on Shamia too about that whole mess, and I always assumed that they were still on bad terms. But we find out that Phaedra and Shamia were on a show together and they had a good time and things are good between them. So again, I was shocked to hear that, because I remember how Shamia could not stand Miss Phaedra Parks. And rightfully so, because Phaedra's lie could have easily ruined her engagement to her husband. So yeah, I'd have a lot of smoke for Phaedra too. So now Portia brings up Drew, and she's like, do you know her? And Phaedra says, not that well. So now Portia says, well, girl, she's actually working with my baby's father. So Phaedra's like, wait, selling hot dogs? And Portia says, no, allegedly she was sitting on his hot dog. And I said, Portia, you're not embarrassed to be spreading around a lie that you know is a lie? You know that Drew does not want Dennis. So now Phaedra starts throwing shade about Angela and Charles Oakley. She says, oh, and somebody told me that Charles Oakley is married and has a wife. So Portia's like, oh my gosh, girl, you didn't know that Charles Oakley is married? And I said, so this is why Angela said in her press run that her and Phaedra got off to a rocky start. Phaedra, the way you went out so bad a decade ago, if I were you, I would just sit there, eat my food, collect my check, and be pleasant. I don't know why you're trying to start mess with Charles and Angela Oakley. It feels like you learned nothing from your time away from the show. There's been no growth at all. So now Portia tells Phaedra about their trip to Grenada, and she's like, girl, let me call up Shamia because her and Kelly are hosting the trip together and I want you to come. So they FaceTime Kelly and Shamia and they're both like, oh yeah, girl, like we want you on the trip. Come on, it's gonna be a good time. So Phaedra's excited for the trip. She says it's gonna be a good time. And then she says that we have strawberry shortcake Kelly, sweet Shamia, girl about town Edie Brit. I said, not Edie Brit. Then she says we have the fluid friend Drewzilla. And a quick side note, why is Phaedra so pressed about Drew? Because for her to call her Drewzilla, I'm like, is there some beef that we don't know about? I'm noticing the slight shade towards Drew and I'm just not getting it. But then again, you know what? Let me not say that. Phaedra and Portia are besties. So of course, whoever Portia does not like, Phaedra also is not going to like either. So it makes sense. Silly me. I just got it. And then Phaedra says, we have the secret wife of Charles Oakley. And I said, she's not that secret. Just Google her name. But we close out the episode with Phaedra saying that she can't wait to dive in and have fun and how it's going to be a buffet of foolishness. And I said, yeah, because you're the one who's about to be starting all the foolishness because that's how you are. I have to be honest, I don't feel like Bravo needed to ask Phaedra back. What is she going to bring in these last 6 episodes? And I'm really curious to see the dynamic now with Phaedra being back and how that's going to work for Portia and Shamia's friendship. But guys, that was my recap. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for listening on the podcast. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all later. Bye.